You typed a comment, hit tab, and Copilot wrote the whole function in 2 seconds. It worked. And somewhere in the back of your head, a small, quiet voice asked if you still needed to exist. I have been building software for over a decade. I have shipped things, deleted things, and rewritten code I swore was fine. And I am going to tell you the truth about this AI moment, because half the internet is either panicking or selling you a course. The easy code is gone. The boilerplate, the CRUD endpoint, the React form, the rejects you always Googled anyway. A model writes that now, faster than you, and mostly correctly. That part of the job is over. But here is what nobody selling the course will say out loud. The easy code was never the job. It was just the visible part of the job. The actual value was always in the judgment around it. So the skills that used to be nice to have are now the entire game. Today I'm giving you 7 of them. The durable ones. The ones that decide whether you are an engineer who uses AI or an engineer quietly being replaced by someone who does. Let's start with the one everyone assumes they already have. Let's start with reading code you did not write. For years, the hardest code you dealt with was the code you wrote 6 months ago and forgot. Now you are shipping hundreds of lines an hour that you never typed. Cursor generated it. Claude suggested it. You accepted it because it looked plausible, and the tests went green. Plausible is doing a lot of work in that sentence. The skill that matters now is not writing code. It is reviewing code at speed, with suspicion, without your ego in the way. Can you look at a function you did not author and spot the off by one, the missing null check, the n+1 query hiding inside an innocent-looking loop? Can you tell when the model quietly invented an API method that does not exist? Reading code was always the underrated skill. Senior engineers spend more time reading than writing. They always have. The difference now is that the reading is the whole job, and the volume just went up tenfold. If you accept generated code, you cannot fully explain. You are not a developer anymore. You are a very expensive rubber stamp. Here is the second one, and it is the skill that separates the levels. System design. An AI is brilliant inside a single file. Give it a function, a component, a query, and it produces something clean. But ask it to hold your entire system in its head, the way data flows from the queue through the service into the database and back out through the cache, and it starts guessing. It does not know your Postgres instance is already melting under load. It does not know this new endpoint will hammer a third-party API that rate limits you at midnight. It has no memory of the incident last March. System design is about the connections between the pieces, the trade-offs, the failure modes, the things that only make sense when you can see the whole board. That is context no model has, because that context lives in your head and in scars from production. Anyone can generate a service now. Knowing whether that service should exist, where it sits, and what it will quietly break, that is the actual work. The model builds rooms. You are still the architect deciding whether the house stands up. Number 3, and this one you will use every single day. Debugging AI output is its own discipline now, and it is harder than debugging your own mistakes. When you write a bug, there is usually a reason, a flawed assumption you can retrace. When a model writes a bug, it can be anything. It confidently used a library version that was deprecated 2 years ago. It mixed 2 different auth patterns because it saw both in its training data. It hallucinated a config option that reads perfectly and simply does nothing. The code looks right. It is well structured. It is commented. It has that tidy professional shape. And it is wrong in a way that gives you no signal at all. Debugging your own code, you follow your own logic. Debugging generated code, you are reverse engineering the reasoning of a machine that has no reasoning, only patterns. The engineers thriving right now are the ones who never trusted output just because it compiled. They read the stack trace. They check the actual docs. They reproduce it in isolation. That instinct, distrust the confident thing, is worth more than it has ever been. This next one is harder to teach and impossible to fake. Taste. Knowing what good actually looks like. An AI will happily hand you 3 different solutions to the same problem, and all 3 will run. One is a clever one-liner. Nobody on your team will understand in a year. One is over-engineered, 3 layers of abstraction for a thing that happens exactly once. And one is boring, readable, and correct. The model does not know which is which. It has no preference, no sense of what your team can maintain at 2 in the morning during an outage. You do. Or you should. Taste is the accumulated judgment of having maintained bad code and felt the pain personally. It is knowing the clever solution is a trap, that the abstraction is premature, that boring almost always wins. When code generation is free, the bottleneck stops being production and becomes selection. Anyone can produce 10 options. The value is in the person who can look at 10 options and know immediately which one you will not regret. That is not a prompt. That is years. Moving on to something that sounds soft but absolutely is not. Skill 5 is the ability to describe what you actually want, precisely, before a single line gets written. Call it specification. Call it articulating intent. The AI is a genie that grants exactly what you ask for, including all the things you forgot to mention. If your requirements are vague, the output is vague, and confidently so. What are the edge cases? What happens when the input is empty, or the network drops halfway, or 2 users hit this at the same instant? A model will not ask you. It fills the gap with an assumption and moves on, and you find out in production. The engineers pulling ahead right now are the ones who can turn a fuzzy Slack message from a stakeholder into a crisp, unambiguous description of the actual behavior. That was always the real hard part of software. Writing the code was the easy translation step at the end. Now that the translation step is automated, the thinking that has to come before it is finally exposed for what it always was, the whole job. Here's another one that separates the calm engineers from the ones permanently on fire. The 6th skill is judgment about when not to use the thing at all. Because the reflex now is to reach for the AI for everything, and that reflex will burn you. Some problems are faster to just think through than to prompt, refine, and reprompt for 20 minutes. Some code is too security sensitive, too core, too load-bearing to hand to a generator you cannot fully audit. Sometimes the model gives you a working answer to the wrong problem, and you would have caught that in the 10 seconds of thinking you skipped. Knowing the boundaries of the tool is the mark of someone who genuinely understands it. A junior uses AI for everything and cannot tell you why. A senior uses it for the boilerplate, the exploration, the rough first draft, and then closes the laptop lid on it the moment the stakes get real. The tool is incredible. Reaching for it without thinking is not using a tool, it is being used by one. Discretion is a skill. It always was. And finally, the one that sits underneath all 6 of the others. Accountability. You still own the outcome. When that generated code takes down checkout on a Friday afternoon, you cannot stand in the incident channel and say the AI wrote it. Nobody cares. Your name is on the pull request. You approved it. You shipped it. It is yours. This is the part the panic misses completely. The AI does not carry the pager. It does not sit in the post-mortem. It does not answer to the customer who just lost their data. The responsibility did not move a single inch. If anything, it got heavier, because now you are accountable for code you did not even write, produced at a volume you can barely review. That is the real shift. The machine took the typing. It did not take the ownership. And ownership was always the thing that made you an engineer rather than a code monkey. The people who understand this treat every generated line as their own, because legally, professionally, and morally, it is. The rest are just waiting for the outage with their name on it. So here is the actual takeaway. None of the skills that matter now are new. Reading code, system design, debugging, taste, clear thinking, judgment, ownership. These were always the things that separated good engineers from people who could type. The AI did not change what matters. It just deleted the part of the job that was hiding it. For years, you could get by on being fast at writing boilerplate. That cover is gone now. What is left is the actual engineering, the thinking, and it is now the whole visible surface of your value. That is not a threat. If you are the kind of person who was always more interested in the why than the syntax, this is genuinely the best time in history to be you. The easy code was never the point. You are about to find out if you always knew that. If this turned the panic into something useful, you know where the subscribe button lives. And if someone on your team still thinks the AI is coming for their job instead of their busy work, send them this one.